And welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to share a brand new report from the US Census Bureau regarding new home construction numbers nationwide. I'll break this down by each of the four major US regions as well, regarding permits being pulled, housing starts, and much, much more. So this was just posted today, which is December 19th for the month of November here. Let's first talk about permits being pulled on a national level. And these numbers, by the way, are in thousands of units, and also they're seasonally adjusted and annualized as well. So total permits being pulled for November, there was just under 1.5 million, 1,460,000 to be exact. That actually came in slightly less than the forecast of 1.47 million. What I'm more focused on though, because this channel is all about residential real estate for single family houses, that actually increased by 0.7% from October, and a giant increase of 22.8% from 1 year ago. Whereas permits being pulled for apartment buildings, these are 5 units or more, decreasing by 9.6% month to month, and also declining by 21%. Pretty crazy, right? We have very close to all-time record highs for the number of units under construction for apartment buildings. And that is right here. And the reason why I mentioned that is that because we have near record high levels of apartment buildings under construction, of course it makes sense we're seeing this pullback in permits being pulled. Whereas permits being pulled for single family houses is really tied to mortgage rates and of course demand from home buyers. And because rates have been decreasing for about 2 months now, this is one reason why permits being pulled are actually increasing right now. And in fact, the biggest increases year over year is actually in the South as well as the West, a giant increase of 39% there. One thing I do want to point out to you guys though is that it is a step in the right direction to see that builders overall are getting more permits being authorized, especially for single family houses. However, when comparing this to last year though, on a year-to-date change here, the year-to-date change is down by 8.4%. This means when comparing the year-to-date at this time last year compared to this year, we're down by 8.4%. So more permits were pulled last year compared to this year, even though we did see a small increase up by 0.7%. Now let's also talk about housing starts. This is the beginning phase in the construction of a brand new house. If you guys want to see more options for houses available for sale for years to come, we want to see home building really start to increase greatly, right? So again, these are also in thousands of units, and also it is seasonally adjusted and annualized as well. The column here I'm focusing on is 1 unit. So housing starts for new single family houses increased by 18%, and also a giant increase of 42% compared to November 2022. Look at this big difference though. Apartment buildings, 5 units or more compared to 1 year ago, down by 34%, whereas single family increased by 42%. Again, new construction of apartment buildings is decreasing big time because we're very, very close to all-time record highs under construction. One more thing I do want to mention regarding housing starts is that total housing starts, which includes single family plus multifamily, was at 1,560,000. That was the pace back in November. This is well above the estimate of 1.36 million. And that was driven by the giant increase of housing starts of new single family houses. What's also pretty wild is that this is pretty much across the United States here. Giant increase of more than 30% for each of these US regions here. The Midwest increasing by 83% year over year, giant increase of 50% from 1 month ago. Whereas the West was the only region that decreased compared to 1 month ago, down by 0.8%, even though it did increase by over 40% year over year. So let's have a look at our good Uncle Fred here regarding housing starts of single family houses here. So right now, again, the pace is at 1,143,000. That actually is a sharp increase compared to the previous month. But on top of that, the pace this November is the highest pace we had going back to April of 2022. Also about 1.1 million. This is also well above pre-pandemic levels. So for example, back in, let's just look at November 2019, there was only 911,000. Now there's over 1.1 million. On top of that, when we zoom out going back to the year of 2000, this is actually the highest levels we've had looking at pre-pandemic levels since April of 2007. Let's also have a look at the total number of units under construction. Let's first talk about single-family houses. So for November, there was 680,000. That is not annualized, but that is seasonally adjusted. That's a gain of about 2% month to month, but a decrease of 10.8% year over year. For 5 units or more under construction, we're at 988,000, an increase of 7.9% year over year. But it actually is below the all-time record highs that was set back in July at over 1 million units. So let's have a look at our good Uncle Fred here, looking at single-family houses under construction here. This increase this November is actually the first increase in quite some time here. As you can see here, ever since really June last year, the number of units under construction has been decreasing. Also, as you guys can see right here, construction is still well elevated though, at 680,000 new single-family houses under construction. Compare that to pre-pandemic levels. I'll just look at November 2019. There was only 518,000. And zooming out over the past 10 years, you really can see how the buildup in construction surged in 2020 through 2022. And then it decreased ever since really July this year, or July last year, I should say. In regards to apartment buildings under construction, the peak again was set back in July this year and has been decreasing very, very slowly ever since then. But looking at going back to the 1970s here, you can really see how high these numbers are still. So the peak again was about right there, just over 1 million. The previous record high was set back in the mid 1970s at just under 901,000. I've been mentioning this on the channel for quite some time because we have near all-time record highs for apartment buildings under construction. And this again should put downward pressure on rents in the next several months here once these apartment buildings get completed and they starting to rent them out. And of course, when they do that, when we get more supply for apartment buildings, that should decrease inflation numbers because one of the gauges of the CPI, for example, or the Consumer Price Index is based on shelter costs, which is tied to rents on a national level. Something else I found to be interesting as well is that for single family houses under construction, look at this. The Northeast, the only region that increased on a year-over-year basis, up by 9.7% compared to November 2022. Whereas the Midwest, the South, and the West decreased by more than 10%. Now, speaking of completions here, here's a look at that for apartment buildings, 5 units or more. Giant increase of 26.5% in those buildings that are being completed compared to October. Also a small gain of 9.5% from 12 months ago. In contrast, the number of houses that were completed were actually down 3.2% month to month and also down by 13% year over year. So just taking a step back here and kind of summarizing today's video here, here's my take here. So regarding permits being authorized, it appears that builders are getting a little bit more confident regarding building new single-family houses because that increased slightly compared to the previous month, and also we're up by about 23% year over year. In stark contrast though, because we have very high levels in the number of apartment buildings under construction, it makes sense that permits being pulled for those is decreasing greatly. We also can see the same dynamics regarding housing starts because that increased big time month to month as well as year over year for single family houses, whereas apartment buildings decreased by about 34%. So again, builders are actually seeing more traffic They're anticipating more demand because of the decrease in rates, down by about 1.4 percentage points over the past 2 months. And that could be one reason why builders are kind of ramping up construction right now. Now, speaking of builder confidence, here's a new report just announced yesterday, in fact, from the National Association of Home Builders. This is builder confidence for building new single-family houses. That actually increased 3 points in December. This is a survey for the month of December here. So it increased overall. So builders are actually more confident regarding building houses this December. It says falling rates helped end a 4-month decrease in builder confidence, and recent economic data signal improving housing conditions heading into 2024. Regarding these economic data, I believe they're talking about the Fed, how they stated they're going to decrease rates approximately 3 times in 2024, and also decrease rates further in 2025 and 2026. And because of this, a lot of people believe that rates or mortgage rates will also decrease as well. It says with the rates down roughly 50 basis points over the past month, builders are reporting an uptick in traffic or homebuyer traffic. The housing market appears to have passed peak mortgage rates for the cycle, and this should help to spur home buying demand in the coming months. Now, here's a chart looking at their index for builder confidence. And by the way, any number below 50 means that builders are pessimistic overall regarding building new single-family houses. So even though we did see a slight increase compared to November, we're still at very, very low levels here at 37. So now for 4 consecutive months now, builders overall are still pessimistic regarding our U.S. housing market. Something I found to be interesting as well when looking at this chart right here is what happened last year. Look at builder confidence in January last year was at 83. Builders highly confident regarding our housing market here. And by the time we hit, when was this? By the time we hit December, we're at 31. Builders very, very pessimistic regarding the housing market here. But ever since then, a small increase through July this year, followed by a steady decrease through November. So with that said, one more thing I do want to mention is that this is just a small snapshot regarding what's happening right now in our housing market regarding rates. We've had 2 months in which rates have been decreasing, and for about a week or so, rates have been hovering around 6.6%. So again, a lot could change, right? If we get reports regarding the inflation increasing once again, that's going to wreak havoc regarding the rates we're seeing in today's market here. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens for next year, especially in the early spring home buying season. What I'm going to be personally following and reporting to you guys is mortgage rates and also inventory numbers. And a key number regarding inventory is the amount of people who decide to list their houses for sale, because that continues to decrease greatly. Of course, that would put downward pressure on inventory and upward pressure on prices. So I'll definitely keep you posted with latest developments. I appreciate you. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.